EM accuses me of raping her 14-year-old daughter, and my own crazy mother decides to go along with it, despite concrete evidence that this, in fact, was not true. It's a long one. First off, I need to say that I discovered this sub and all of its hellishly delightful tales a week or two ago, and reading some of the experiences here has reminded me of some encounters of my own that I'd locked away. This is not one of those. This is something that is seared forever into my mind. Unfortunately for me, there are many of these experiences. The people involved. I will not be using real names. Sarah, the girl involved. Karen, the entitled wench that birthed Sarah. Claire, my mother. Now, my mother is not entitled. Explaining the type of person she is a very challenging thing, and it would also be assuming that she understands how human emotion works, which she doesn't. She has her own very odd set of emotions. She's the type of parent that sends her child to be tested for dyslexia, gets informed that her child is indeed dyslexic, but decides to ignore the diagnosis because she doesn't believe it, even though she chose to have the test done because she thought her child may be dyslexic. She's that type of parent. How do I know this? Because I found out I was dyslexic when I was 24, when she decided to tell me in casual conversation. The only reason I bring this particular event up, out of the swirl of hell that is my experiences with her, is that I recently read the word dyslexic, and it was oddly enough the jolt that was needed for me reminisce this lovely tale of my childhood to all you fine folks. Anyway, I digress. Ben, a friend of mine, whose house we were having a party at. Me, 14-year-old me. Boy, if that wasn't clear. I was 14, and as some teenagers are known to do, me and some friends enjoyed sneaking a bit of booze out of our parents' supply, throwing little parties, etc. At this particular party, there was 8 to 10 of us, boys and girls. Ben's parents were away somewhere, so his place was the obvious go-to spot. It was during a summer holiday. Now, it wasn't like we had parents that didn't watch us. Quite the opposite. Not all of my mates, but some of them. We had very strict parents. But the thing about overly strict parenting, combined with determined kids, and I was so very determined, is that you slowly create a child that is very good at sneaking around behind your back and getting away with it, because the punishment definitely wasn't worth being caught. This was a long time ago, 15 years, so the irrelevant details escape me, and I will not be able to give you 100% accurate dialogue, but I'll tell you what happened. We were partying, however slightly intoxicated kids do, listening to music, flirting, etc. Ben's parents were pretty wealthy, and he had a swimming pool and a snooker table with loads of other fun stuff. So we always jumped at the opportunity to go to his. We would tell our parents we were at different people's houses or whatever it was that would work that particular time. Only this time, Ben's parents decided to call a family friend relative to go check on the house. This lady came into the house, I've no idea who she was, to find drunk kids messing around in different places all over the place. Nothing too bad. The house wasn't trashed, just some mess here and there. She found me and Sarah walking back towards the house from the garden. Sarah was doing up, adjusting her skirt, and I was adjusting my clothes. Me and Sarah had been fooling around and making out, as me and Sarah did sometimes. But it was all hands, nothing more. Parents got called. We all got in trouble and dealt with accordingly. We all thought that was that. Still, to this day, I have no idea how the story of Sarah and me walking back from the garden got whispered in Karen's ear. But it did. One day, a couple of weeks after we got caught having the party, Claire received a phone call from an irate Karen, who she'd never met before, who was telling her that I had raped her daughter. I do not know the details of that call. All I know is that Claire walked into my room, told me that she'd just been on the phone with Sarah's mum, and she's told her I did, and that I'm grounded, and she took away the video player and little TV I had in my room, and that we'll talk about it the next day, when my parents and Karen had decided what the best thing to do was. At no point did she ask me if I had done anything, or my side of the story at all. The next day, after an evening of trying to work out what it was that I'm accused of, I was standing in front of my parents, being explained to that what I had done was very serious, and I was in very deep trouble. I was asking what I'd done, but it was time to listen. I was wrong. As usual, this was normal behavior from my parents. My dad was a complete asshole to me also, but not in the same way as Claire. Finally, it got round to informing me of what I apparently did. Rape. Naturally, I was fucking outraged. A little something about me. From about the age 11, 12, I decided I wasn't putting up with any more shit. I would stand up for myself as much as I could. I'd had enough of this endless, ridiculous shit from my parents. It didn't stop anything at all, but it meant that I did one of two things. I successfully avoided the confrontation altogether, or I stood up for myself. I didn't care how old you were, if you were a teacher, parent, etc. If you were treating me unfairly, I would make a point of it and not back down. I would rarely get worked up and shout. I understood from an early age that shouting rarely gets you anywhere, but I will admit that I did sometimes lose my temper, usually when my parents' ways would just get on top of me. I would never be rude unless you being rude to me. I read about the golden rule a long time ago and loved it. Treat others how you want to be treated. I've lived my life by that phrase for a long time. This applies to entitled, not nice people out in the wild, and still applies to this day. It's probably why I encounter so many entitled people. I just don't let them get away with their shit, even if it inconveniences me. Call me petty, call me immature, call me whatever you want. I honestly don't mind. I've seen too many people get away with doing and saying so much outrageous shit and genuinely hurting, inconveniencing, upsetting others that these people need someone to tell them, politely, or in their own words, to fuck off. I have come to enjoy doing this, but those are stories for another day. Back to the events. Now you know a little more about me. Upon hearing that I was being accused of rape and being completely innocent of this, I proceed to question how I was being accused as because I was still a virgin, and I knew for a fact that Sarah was still a virgin. I obviously couldn't be 100% sure of this, but I was pretty certain of it, seeing as me and Sarah had talked about this before. Obviously, my parents didn't listen to me. They told me that Karen was going to call the police. They were going to call my school. I didn't go to school with Sarah, but my parents decided it should be done, etc., etc. I was sent back to my room. Still no one had even asked my side of the story. But now I knew what I was in trouble for. As utterly delusional as it was, I knew. About a week after not being able to use the phone, TV, games, outside, go to football training for either of the teams I played for, soccer for you American comrades, or do anything at all, really. It was getting towards the end of the summer holidays, and it was time to go back to school. Claire came into my room and told me that Sarah's parents wanted to call the police. But when she was speaking to Karen, they'd both decided that I would apologize to Karen over the phone, not Sarah, the girl who I'd supposedly raped, but her mother, and I'd apologize to Karen's family, at their house in person, and if didn't seem suitably sorry, then they would call the police together. Again, I was fucking outraged and hit the roof, but I'd had a long time to think about this, and well, no fucking way. I told Claire that they should call the police if they thought I'd raped Sarah, but fine, I'll talk to Karen, because, well, I really didn't have much choice in this. So I was put on the phone with this utter bitch that I've never met or spoken to, and who is casually trying to ruin my life. I'll never forget what she first said. So, what do you have to say to me? I immediately asked her what Sarah had to say about this. She was demanding an apology. I was demanding to speak to Sarah. This went on for a while, and in the end, the call ended with me saying that I wasn't going to be apologizing for something that I hadn't done, and I wanted to talk to Sarah. Claire sent me back to my room, and I completely lost my mind. I was refusing to pack, eat, go back to school, do anything until Sarah went to the doctors and had her virginity tested. Test to see if a girl's hymen was still intact. Because if the police were getting involved with this, then I wanted confirmation whether Sarah was a virgin or not. I understood that if she wasn't, I was completely screwed, but it was literally the only option remaining to me. Claire must have gotten fed up with me pretty much repeating one phrase over again and refusing to do anything at all. Called Karen and explained about the test I wanted done. Again, I have no idea what happened while I was shut in my room, but the night before I had to go back to school arrived and I had a visit from Claire. She proceeded to tell me that Sarah had had the test and her hymen was still intact, so the police were not going to be involved. But I still had to apologize to Sarah's entire family because of my behavior. I was very relieved about the test, but I was utterly gobsmacked that I still had to go and apologize when I hadn't done anything wrong at all, especially seeing as everyone now knew this. I bluntly refused, but Claire informed me that she was driving me to Sarah's house on the way to school the next day. I was sent to an all-boys boarding school when I was 11. I was there on a sports scholarship, and I had to be up very early to be dropped off at school anyway, without factoring in this outrageous stop-off. The school was far away and a long drive. I remember sitting in the back of the car when it was dark, surrounded by my stuff. I had to stay until Christmas, so had a lot of things with me, absolutely seething with quite rage while being driven to Sarah's house to apologize to her family. I wasn't saying anything at all to Claire, because I knew it was pointless. She hadn't even asked for my side of the story. She has never mentioned it again, ever. I still can't believe it, typing it out now. Absolutely ridiculous. So I arrived to Sarah's house. I'm pushed inside by Claire, and I meet Sarah's mother, aunt, uncle, and older brother for the first time. Sarah wasn't to be seen. I'm taken into the living room, where they all sit on the sofas, including my mother, Claire, like they are on some twisted court and are looking at me like I'm fully deserving of whatever they decide. Karen's first words were the same as they were on the phone. I remember because of how much they annoyed me, Kay. So, what do you have to say to me? I said everything very calmly, because I knew shouting would get me nowhere. Me. Where is Sarah? Is the first thing I have to say to you. The second thing is, what do you want me to apologize for when Sarah has literally been to the doctors and it's been confirmed that I did not rape her and that she still, in fact, was a virgin? Kay, don't speak to me like that in my own house. I don't want to be speaking to you at all, but I don't have much choice about it, seeing as you demanded I be here. Karen starts to bellow. Kay, I will not be spoken to in my own house like this by a fucking little Pocky that abused my daughter. For anyone wondering, Pocky is a racial slur for Asian people in the UK. I'm half Asian, but people usually guess I'm from the Mediterranean. No one has ever guessed right. Me. Listen, I haven't abused your daughter. At all. You got her drunk and touched her. Fucking dirty Pocky. I'm still not shouting. No, we got drunk together and we were making out. Together. Has Sarah even said I've even done anything wrong? Kay, our little angel would never drink and definitely wouldn't let a boy touch her, especially one like you. This whole time my mom, Claire, was just sitting there staring at me, expressionless. She's white, my dad wasn't, so the racist stuff only applied to me in the room. Fun stuff. Me. Listen, I've had enough of this. I've done absolutely nothing wrong. I'm definitely not apologizing for something I haven't done. I'm going to wait by the car. Karen, you're damn lucky Sarah's dad had to be at work because he beat the shit out of you. For doing nothing? Whatever. And turned and walked out of the house. Claire came out about 5 minutes later, unlocked the car, and when we were inside and back on the road, she said that was very rude and that I needed to apologize to her for doing that. I promptly told her to go fuck herself and didn't say another word the rest of the journey. Finally arrived at school, I unloaded my stuff and took it inside without saying anything, and Claire drove off. And that was the last time Claire has ever talked about it, that I know of. So there it is, how I almost had my life ruined by a crazy Karen and my own mother. Sorry it's so long. Bonus points. Sarah ended up getting pregnant at 16, and it was between two guys, but they had no idea which guy actually was the dad. One of the potential guys ended up raising the kid without any DNA test or any confirmation to my knowledge. TLDR was falsely accused of rape by an entitled mom. My mother doesn't even question it and goes along with it. I'm taken to the girl's house to apologize to her whole family, which I did not do. Edit. Wow, thanks for the support, everyone. Just thought I'd address a couple of things. I'll reply later when I have some more time. The hymen test. When all this happened, I was 14. I had no idea how the hymen actually functioned or its purpose biologically. My knowledge at the time was incredibly basic and completely wrong. It was common thinking for a lot of people my age when I was a kid that if you have sex equals broken hymen, for girls obviously. But apparently, all the adults involved were also lacking in this information, which ended up being pretty lucky for me. Added a TLDR. Edit 2. Answering a couple questions that have popped up a few times. I have only ever seen Sarah a few times since this, and it was always briefly and when we were in a group of people. It's not exactly a topic for group conversation. Absolutely no idea what happened with Karen, but I can hope that life handed her a really shit hand, one way or another. I have brought this up once with my mother, and she just pretended like I didn't say anything at all, and changed the subject. I haven't pressed her further about it because I know it's pointless. My dad was just a very strict, pig-headed guy that completely refused to listen. Being wrong was not a thing to him. He wasn't wrong about anything, no matter how small. He died 8 or so years ago. I left home at 15 and didn't speak to them for a long time. I started speaking to them again in my 20s, and the only reason I did then was because they were the only family I have. My mom hasn't improved, changed, but I don't put up with any of her shit at all, and she's not in a position to affect any part of my life at all anymore. She hasn't since I was 15. Yes, she is fucking crazy and a terrible parent. Both of my parents were, if they can really be called parents. I don't call her mum, because she's not.